He said she didn't belong in that office, didn't fit the image of the company, didn't carry herself like the others. But what he didn't know is that she spent her whole life walking through doors that nobody wanted to open. They saw a tired woman in department store flats, a wrinkle in her collar, a folder full of late reports. They didn't see the hospital nights, the special diet, the IEP meetings, the meltdowns in the parking lot. They didn't see her daughter, 9 years old. Cerebral palsy, still learning to speak clearly, still learning to walk with pride. But laughing, always laughing, especially when her mama came home, even if her back was bent from working 2 shifts. And yet, on the 7th floor of Branton Realty and Finance, none of that mattered. Not the listings she closed, not the long hours, not the 2-bedroom condo she helped flip to fund her boss's bonus. To them, she was just the single mom with a situation. They smiled to her face, called her inspiring. But every time she left at 4:30 to pick up her child from therapy, someone whispered. And last Monday, the man in the glass office said it out loud, said she was lucky to have a job at all, that he could hire 2 full-time agents for what she cost the company in adjustments, said her daughter was a personal problem and maybe she should think about working somewhere that's more understanding. He laughed when he said it. The other managers did too, but she didn't laugh. She stood still, like she always had, staring down men who thought they held the key to her future. She clenched her jaw and went back to her desk. But something shifted that day, something quiet, like the click of a lock deep inside her spirit. Because what he didn't know was that she had sold that house. She had done the walkthroughs, the paperwork. She had closed that deal, and the bonus he bragged about was built off her back. So when he called her child a burden, he didn't just cross a line, he opened a door, and she was ready to walk through it. If you've ever had to work twice as hard to be seen as half as good, take a breath for yourself. This story might be closer to yours than you think. The next morning, her alarm went off at 4:55 a.m. Not that she'd really slept. She laid in bed for hours, listening to the soft whir of the feeding pump. Her daughter had trouble keeping food down again, which meant extra laundry, extra care, and a longer note in her school file. She'd already written it, typed it up between switching loads of clothes and prepping the mobility bag. Everything had to be ready. Splints, wipes, change of clothes, emergency meds. Even her daughter's favorite pink headphones, because loud sounds could ruin her whole day. She brushed her child's hair with slow hands, clipped a little gold bow on the side. And when she looked into those eyes, full of mischief, full of light, she remembered why she still fought. Not for recognition, not for kindness from men like him, but for mornings like this one, when her daughter said, in her slow, slurred speech, "Mommy, you're my superhero." She almost cried, but heroes don't cry before sunrise. So she smiled, dropped her daughter off, texted the school therapist about the new brace discomfort, and drove in silence with a coffee she couldn't afford and a blouse with a coffee stain she couldn't clean in time. When she walked into the office, her name was already being called. Jessica, conference room, now. It was Frank, the same manager who laughed the day before. He was standing by the door, holding a folder like it was a weapon. She didn't flinch, walked straight past him, took her seat. 4 men in suits, 1 woman, someone from HR she'd never met in person. The folder hit the table. "Your numbers are down," Frank said. "Your emails are behind. We've received complaints about your attitude during team calls. And yesterday, you were overheard making a threat." She blinked. "A threat?" He nodded, saying, "We're lucky you don't sue us for discrimination. That's inappropriate, Jessica. Highly inappropriate." Her lips parted, but no words came. They weren't asking. They were documenting, lining up paper bullets. "And worst of all," he added, "we have reason to believe a file went missing under your watch, an address portfolio." She shook her head slowly. "That's not possible," she said. "I haven't touched that file since Friday." But no one responded. The HR woman just kept writing. Frank leaned back, smug. And that's when Jessica knew. This wasn't about performance. It never was. It was about pushing her out, without ever saying the real reason, but she also knew something else. Something none of them could see, because she'd trained herself to look weak while listening closely, and now she remembered something odd. Friday afternoon. A voice, a joke, a sentence that didn't make sense at the time. It came back to her all at once, and with it, the name of the person who had the file last. It was casual, offhand, meant to be harmless, but Jessica had learned that in places like this, truth never comes straight. It comes sideways, in jokes, in mistakes, in silence. Friday afternoon, just before close, she heard Tony laugh. Tony, the broker's favorite. Fresh haircut, shiny shoes, never missed a happy hour. He walked through the bullpen with a folder in one hand, energy drink in the other. And he said, "Damn, if this portfolio was mine, I'd flip it into a Tesla and bounce." Laughter. He tossed it on his desk. But when Jessica passed by 5 minutes later, it was gone. At the time, she didn't think much of it. She was too focused on a client call, trying to calm a first-time buyer who just lost her job mid-escrow. But now, that memory was sharp, clear, and that folder, the one they were blaming her for, was the same one Tony joked about holding. She sat in that conference room, and for the first time, she didn't explain herself. She let the silence do the talking, the kind of silence that made Frank fidget, the kind that made HR clear her throat. Jessica stood slowly, reached into her tote, pulled out a small, spiral-bound notebook. "I log everything," she said softly. "Dates, times, access, interactions." She opened it to the page marked with a red tab. Friday, 4:47 p.m. Tony walking toward East Exit, folder labeled Tucker Portfolio in hand. Frank's eyes narrowed. HR adjusted her glasses. Jessica didn't blink. "If y'all are launching an investigation," she said, "make sure it's thorough." And just like that, the meeting ended. She wasn't fired, not that day. But something in the air had changed, and later that afternoon, as she walked past Tony's desk, she saw him close his screen fast, too fast. Their eyes met. He smirked. "Need help with anything, Jess?" She smiled. "Not today." But she didn't stop walking, because her break wasn't over. She had someone to call, not a lawyer, not yet, but someone just as important. The janitor, Mr. Leonard, the only person who stayed past 8 p.m., the only one who saw everything people tried to hide. And he owed her a favor, a big one, because 6 months ago she saved his job after Frank tried to write him up for sleeping in the supply closet. She knew the truth. He wasn't sleeping. He was resting between chemo appointments. And Jessica? She told HR the real reason his hands shook. That night, Mr. Leonard kept his job, and now he just might help her keep hers. Mr. Leonard didn't speak much, but when he did, you listened. She caught him just after sunset, wheeling the mop bucket down the hallway that always smelled like printer ink and ambition. He didn't look up when she approached, didn't pause his rhythm, but when she said, "Leonard, I need a moment," he stopped, turned to her with eyes that had seen too many people pretend to be better than they are. "What they doing to you?" he asked. Jessica exhaled. "They're building a case, missing file, accusations, trying to push me out without saying why." He nodded slowly, wiped his brow with an old towel from his back pocket. "They always start quiet," he said. "Then they try to make you doubt yourself." She looked him in the eye. "Did you see who took the Tucker portfolio Friday?" He didn't answer right away, just leaned on the mop handle. "Girl in accounting dropped a coffee near the bullpen. I was cleaning it up. Tony came out the side office with that folder, looked nervous. He tucked it in his bag." Jessica's heart thudded. "Are you sure?" Leonard squinted. "I may not know email, but I know guilt when I see it, and that boy looked guilty." He reached into his cart, pulled out a folded paper towel, unwrapped it like it held gold. Inside was a USB. "Security clears tapes every 72 hours, he said, "but I pulled the feed. Lobby camera shows him leaving with the folder." Jessica held it in her hands like it was a lifeline. "Leonard, why did you keep this?" He looked at her, deep and kind. "Because when you spoke up for me, you weren't scared, and scared people don't save others." She swallowed hard. Her throat burned. "You didn't have to do this." He nodded. "I know, but I see everything, Jess. And you ain't the problem in that office." She thanked him, held the USB like it weighed 100 pounds, because now she had proof, but also a choice. Go to HR, risk retaliation, or wait, and use it when it mattered most. She didn't know yet. But that night, when she picked up her daughter, the little girl handed her a folded paper, a drawing, stick figures, one tall, one small, and a caption in shaky letters, "Me and Mommy, we always win." Jessica smiled through tears, but the next morning, when she came in early to upload the video file from the USB, her computer was gone, her desk wiped clean, and in its place, a single envelope. No name, no note, just a key. It was silver, smooth, no tag, just sitting there, like an unspoken threat. Jessica stood in silence. No one looked her way. No one greeted her, like they knew. She picked it up, cold in her palm, and checked every drawer. Empty. No laptop, no headset, not even a sticky note left behind. It was like she'd been erased. Frank's door was shut. Tony wasn't at his desk, and HR's office light was off, even though it was past opening. But then her phone buzzed. Private number. She let it ring once, twice. Picked up on the third. A pause, then a voice she knew too well. "Jessica, it's Frank." He didn't say good morning, didn't ask how she was. He just said, "You've been reassigned." She blinked. "Reassigned to what?" Another pause. "There's a storage unit downtown, building 4, 3rd floor. We're moving some old client records there, and we need them logged digitally." She gripped the key tighter. "That's not my role." Frank chuckled. "Well, you've made it clear the office environment isn't working for you. This gives you space and keeps you on payroll. Win-win." She didn't answer, didn't need to, because this wasn't a reassignment. This was exile, a slow push toward the exit door, so they could say they tried when she finally gave up. She hung up, didn't say goodbye, just grabbed her tote and walked out of the office that once held her future. Her car was hot. Steering wheel burned her fingers. She rolled the windows down, let the heat soak her skin. As she drove toward the storage building, she thought about her daughter's drawing. We always win. But what if this time they were wrong? What if the good guys don't always win? What if she couldn't protect them both? She parked in front of a rusted loading dock. The stairs creaked. The hallway smelled like dust and mildew. 3rd floor, Unit 3C. The key slid in smoothly. Inside, a folding table, a busted fan, cardboard boxes from the 2000s, and in the corner, an old desktop, barely functional. She sat down, booted it up, and there, taped under the keyboard, was a note. One sentence, block letters, no signature. "They're watching your login." She slammed the power button off, heart pounding, mind racing. Who left that note? And what did they mean? Watching. Jessica sat still in the stale air of the storage unit, trying to piece it all together. If they were monitoring her login, that meant they were tracking her movements, building a file, waiting for her to slip. And the USB in her purse? It wasn't just evidence now. It was dangerous. She thought of Leonard. Was he safe? She reached for her phone. No signal in the unit, no Wi-Fi, no bars. She had to think, stay calm, move careful. She grabbed a legal pad from one of the boxes and started copying down key info from the USB. Timestamps, frame numbers, faces. If they wanted to erase her, they'd have to work harder than that. 2 hours later, she slipped the USB into her bra, locked the unit, and drove to the only place she could think of, her sister's house. They hadn't spoken in 6 months, not since the argument about who helps with Mama's medicine, but blood is blood, and she knew her niece had a spare laptop, something clean, something off the company's network. When she pulled into the driveway, her phone finally buzzed back to life. 10 missed calls, 3 voicemails and 1 voice note from her daughter's speech therapist. Jessica's blood ran cold. She tapped play. "Hi, Ms. Thomas. I just wanted to let you know Amaya had a really rough morning. She asked for you twice. We managed the episode, but she seems anxious. She kept saying, 'Mommy sad, Mommy falling. Just thought you should know.'" Jessica pulled over, parked the car right in front of the sidewalk, hands shaking. Her daughter felt it, even without knowing the details, even with limited words. That child could sense her mother's spirit slipping. "Mommy falling!" Jessica sobbed right there behind the wheel, not because she was weak, but because she knew now she couldn't afford to fall. Not with those little eyes watching, not with that little voice believing. She wiped her face, looked in the mirror, and whispered, "No, Mommy ain't falling." She stepped out the car, took the laptop from her niece, opened it, and for the first time, she hit upload. But just as the file was about to finish syncing to the encrypted drive, the screen went black, and the Wi-Fi disconnected itself. The laptop screen stayed black. No cursor, no fan noise, just silence. Jessica tapped the keys, held the power button. Nothing. The file was halfway uploaded. The only copy of the footage was still on that USB. She yanked it out, checked it. Still warm, still intact. But her niece's Wi-Fi, gone. The whole router, unplugged. Jessica called out, trying to sound calm. "Danny, your internet's down." Her teenage niece shrugged from the kitchen. "Nope, my phone's working fine." Jessica froze. So it wasn't the Wi-Fi. It was her device. The laptop had been wiped, remotely. She felt the air tighten in her chest. Sweat pooled behind her neck. How did they get in? How deep did this go? She grabbed her purse, tucked the USB back inside, and told her sister a quick lie. "Work stuff. Gotta go." Back in the car, she drove without thinking, just moving, trying to stay ahead of the fear. Her hands were shaking too much to text, so she did the only thing she could think to do. She drove to the public library. Outdated desktops, slow connection, but no corporate firewalls, no hidden admin access, just open systems. And peace. She picked the far corner terminal, plugged in the drive, took a breath, and started the upload again. But this time, she didn't just send it to herself. She sent it to someone else. Maria, a cleaning woman from the office, always quiet, always kind. 2 weeks ago, Jessica helped her fill out a rental assistance form after her hours got cut. Maria had hugged her like she saved her life. And today, Jessica was trusting her with everything. No subject line, no explanation, just the file. And a message. "If anything happens to me, give this to the news." She hit send, and for the first time in weeks, she felt like she could breathe. But just as she got up to leave, a hand touched her shoulder. She turned and saw a woman in a blazer, late 40s, worn eyes, clutching a slim leather notebook. "You're Jessica Thomas, right?" Jessica stepped back. "Who's asking?" The woman opened the notebook, flashed a badge. "Internal investigator, Branton Ethics Department. We need to talk." They sat across from each other at a diner near the library, the kind with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that never got warm. Jessica kept one hand near her purse, the other wrapped around the chipped mug. The woman's name was Andrea Parks. She worked for Branton's Internal Compliance Division, a department Jessica didn't even know existed. Andrea sipped her tea, slow, measured, watching Jessica the way a nurse watches a bleeding patient. "I'm not here to intimidate you," she said. "I'm here because you're not the only one." Jessica blinked. "What do you mean?" Andrea slid a folder across the table. Inside, copies of complaints, anonymous statements, time-stamped emails with red flags. "Frank's name comes up a lot," Andrea said, "especially in departments where women report to him, especially single mothers." Jessica stared at the papers. "I filed a complaint last year," Andrea added. "Didn't go anywhere. They said he was too valuable." Jessica swallowed hard. Andrea leaned in. "But when you stood up to him in that meeting, when you brought up discrimination, someone in IT flagged it. And they sent me to manage it quietly." Jessica raised her eyes. "You mean cover it up?" Andrea didn't flinch. "I mean investigate without getting fired." Jessica shook her head. I've got proof. A USB, security footage. Tony took the file. Frank knew. They're trying to frame me. Andrea nodded once. I know, I've been following your logins. That message you sent from the library. I saw it. Jessica's heart jumped. You spying on me? Andrea gave a tired smile. I'm trying to keep you safe. Jessica stared, then whispered, Why me? Andrea looked down at her tea, then said, Because 12 years ago, I was you. Single mom, sick child. They tried to erase me too. I stayed quiet. Jessica leaned back. Let the words sink in. Andrea opened her notebook again. There's a board meeting in 6 days. They review internal conduct cases quarterly. If I get this file submitted by Thursday, they have to listen. Jessica clenched her jaw. And if you don't? Andrea looked her dead in the eye. They'll bury it. And they'll bury you. Jessica reached into her bag, pulled out the USB. This is the only copy, she said. Andrea shook her head. No, it's not. She pulled out her phone, opened an email. The subject line read, If anything happens to me, and below it, the file Jessica sent from the library. Andrea smiled. I told you, you're not alone. Jessica laughed once, sharp and small. But then her phone buzzed, a new voicemail, from the school. Hi, Ms. Thomas. We need you to call us back. There's been an incident with your daughter. She didn't even wait to listen to the whole voicemail. Just slammed the car into gear and drove. Red lights meant nothing. Speed limits didn't exist. The school was 18 minutes away. She got there in 12. When she rushed through the front office, nobody had to tell her where to go. She could hear it, from down the hall. A soft, high-pitched cry, like a wounded bird trying not to be noticed. Her baby. Jessica ran, opened the therapy room door, and saw her daughter curled up on the floor, backpack spilled open, shoes off, one brace twisted sideways. Beside her stood a tall substitute aide, arms crossed, face blank. She refused to transition, the woman said coldly. She threw her device, screamed for her mother, and bit me when I tried to lift her. Jessica knelt fast, arms wide. Amaya, baby, it's Mama. I'm here. The little girl looked up, face wet, hands shaking. She crawled forward, collapsed into Jessica's chest. The aide kept talking. She's a danger to herself and staff when she's dysregulated. We'll need to schedule a review of her placement. Jessica didn't look up, just wrapped her arms tighter, kissed the girl's forehead, whispered the way only a mother can. You're okay, you're safe now. Nobody's taking you from me. But something inside Jessica cracked, because she knew what this was. They weren't just coming for her job anymore. They were coming for her stability, her child's placement, her safety net. She looked up. Where's Ms. Hendricks? She asked, Amaya's usual therapist, the only one who knew how to calm her. She's on leave, the aide replied, still smug. I'm the temporary support. Jessica stood, face hard, voice low. You don't touch my daughter again. The woman scoffed. Ma'am, if you can't handle her needs. Jessica took a step forward and said one word, try me. That night, she didn't sleep. She held Amaya through her fever, fed her broth, repositioned her splint, and stared at the ceiling while the world tried to crush them both. But around 3 a.m., just when the silence got too loud, her phone lit up. A message from Andrea. We need to move fast. I found something you should see. They met in the back of a 24-hour diner, booth near the kitchen, steam from the dishwasher clouding the glass behind them. Andrea slid a folder across the table. Inside, a spreadsheet. Dozens of lines, codes, dates, agent names. Jessica skimmed. What is this? Andrea tapped a row. Bonus payouts, Franks, last 3 years. Jessica's eyes narrowed. Her name was on 3 listings, 3 homes sold above asking, 3 clients she managed alone. But beside each one, the commission wasn't listed under her. It was under Tony's name, and the bonus rolled up into Frank's quarterly total. Jessica's stomach turned. I sold those. I handled those clients. Tony never even met them. Andrea nodded. They've been laundering your work. Tony logs in after you leave, updates the CRM, reassigns the record. Frank approves it quietly. Jessica's hands shook. They stole from me. Andrea leaned in. They used your deals to fund his raise. You were working 2 jobs, mom and agent, and they were padding their pockets while you took the blame for every missed call. Jessica's throat burned, not just from rage, but from knowing this wasn't just about her. This happened to women like her everywhere. Invisible labor, invisible pain. And when they speak up, they're called emotional, difficult, a burden. She flipped to the last page. Her name, next to a total commission value, circled in red, 118,240. Jessica stared. That's how much she brought into the company, without getting credit. Andrea placed a second file beside it. Take this to legal. I'll send the digital copy, but you'll need someone who's not afraid to make it public. Jessica didn't hesitate. She already knew who to call. A woman she met at an open house 2 years ago. Former realtor, now civil rights attorney. She saved her card for someday. Someday had come. But just as Jessica was about to leave, Andrea stopped her. There's one more thing, she said. Pulled out a printed email. It was from Tony, to Frank. Subject line, let's push her out before Q3. She's getting nosy. It was bent at the edges. Faded ink. Stuffed between a bus pass and an old grocery receipt. But Jessica never threw it out. Angela Pruitt, Esker Civil Rights, Employment Law, and on the back, written in blue pen, call me if they ever make you feel small. Jessica held that card like a weapon. She stood in her kitchen, sun barely rising, Amaya still asleep on the couch with her favorite stuffed elephant tucked under her arm. Jessica dialed the number. 3 rings, then a voice. Strong, calm, black. This is Angela. Jessica took a breath and told her everything. The bonuses, the stolen sales, the video file, the missing folder, the reassignment to a storage unit, the aide who hurt her child. Angela didn't interrupt, just listened. And when Jessica finished, there was a pause, then, bring me everything. Today. They met at Angela's office. Brick building, 2nd floor, no gold signs, no fancy desk. But the air in there, it felt like justice. Angela took one look at the files, the commissions, the messages, the copy of the USB footage. Then she said, this isn't just retaliation, it's fraud, it's discrimination, and it's going to court. Jessica looked at her hands. I can't afford to lose my job. Angela leaned forward. You already did. They just haven't told you yet. Jessica's eyes burned, but Angela wasn't finished. I've seen women like you get torn up and tossed out, but not today. Today, we fight. She picked up the phone. And in 10 minutes, Jessica had a formal grievance filed, an EOC complaint opened, and a cease and desist sent to Branton's corporate office. It was more movement than she'd seen in months. But just as Jessica was about to exhale, her phone lit up. A text from Maria, the janitor's niece. They're shredding files. Frank and Tony are here. After hours, Jessica showed the screen to Angela. Angela didn't flinch. Good. Let them shred. Then she picked up a second phone and called a name Jessica hadn't expected to hear. Detective Powell. It's time. Detective Powell didn't walk. He moved, like a man who'd seen too many lies to be surprised by new ones. Jessica met him 2 hours later in Angela's office. He was tall, grey jacket, no nonsense, carried a notebook and a thermos like they were tools of the trade. He listened as Angela laid it out. The bonus laundering, the reassignment, the attempted cover-up, the school incident, the retaliation. Jessica showed him the USB, the spreadsheet, the email with the words, push her out before Q3. Powell flipped a few pages in his notebook, then asked one question. You still have access to your work email? Jessica nodded. Good, he said. Forward that email to me. Include timestamps. We'll subpoena the rest. Jessica hesitated. If I do that, won't they know? Powell gave her a look like steel wrapped in calm. They already know, Miss Thomas. They just think you're too scared to finish what you started. Jessica swallowed, then opened her inbox, typed the detective's address, attached the file, clicked send. Powell leaned back. You'd be surprised how many cases like this disappear. Not because the evidence isn't there, but because the woman breaks before it lands. Jessica looked him dead in the eye. I don't break, he nodded. Then let's make this official. That afternoon, the department launched a formal investigation. Emails were frozen, phone logs pulled, and Frank? He walked into the office Monday morning, smiling like nothing had changed, and found his access revoked. Tony, too. And while they raged behind closed doors, Jessica stayed home, braiding her daughter's hair, filling out Medicaid paperwork, holding her head high. But 3 days later, she got a knock on her door, envelope in hand, from Branton's corporate office. She opened it slowly. Inside, a letter of termination. No severance, no apology. Just a line at the bottom. Due to unprofessional conduct and performance inconsistency. Jessica laughed, not from humor, but from knowing what came next, because they'd just made a very public mistake, firing a mother in the middle of a federal complaint. Retaliation, plain and provable. She sent the letter to Angela. Angela replied with 3 words, "Let them burn." The boardroom was cold. Everything in there was glass, metal, and money. Polished oak table, water bottles lined like trophies, and 12 executives, most of them men who'd never skipped a golf day, sitting like judges in $1,000 suits. Jessica walked in wearing black slacks from a thrift store and her daughter's favorite bracelet on her wrist, a pink beaded thing that said "Mummy Strong." Angela walked beside her, briefcase in hand, chin up. They took their seats. On the other side, Frank, red-faced, Tony, pale, the HR rep who'd once scribbled notes while pretending to care. And at the end of the table, a woman in a navy pantsuit, bored chairwoman. She gave Jessica a nod, then said, "Miss Thomas, you have the floor." Jessica didn't stand. She opened the folder, pulled out a single printed sheet. "I'm here today because I sold the house that paid that man's bonus," she said, pointing at Frank. "He told me my daughter was a burden, that my life was inconvenient for the company. But what he didn't say out loud was what I felt every day walking into this place, that I didn't belong." The room was still. Jessica continued. "Frank authorized a campaign to remove me. Tony stole my commissions. They reassigned me to a storage unit. And when I tried to speak up, they tried to erase me." She passed around copies of the bonus spreadsheet, then the time-stamped email, then the formal EEOC complaint. Angela followed with her own binder, the receipts, the retaliation timeline, the federal investigation now underway, and then Angela played the video. Tony, lobby camera, folder in hand, silence. Frank cleared his throat. "That doesn't prove intent," Angela smiled. "It proves pattern. And when paired with these internal messages," she tapped the email again, "we're talking about willful discrimination, fraud, misuse of company systems, and a wrongful termination that happened during a protected complaint." The board members shifted in their seats. The chairwoman spoke. "Mr. Franklin, Mr. Donnelly, would you like to respond?" Frank started to speak, but before he could finish his sentence, the chairwoman raised her hand. "Enough! This company is not your kingdom, and Ms. Thomas is not your casualty." Jessica felt her throat close, but she stayed composed. The chairwoman continued. "Effective immediately. Mr. Franklin and Mr. Donnelly are suspended without pay pending full review. All internal practices surrounding performance reviews, bonus allocations, and accommodations will be audited. And Ms. Thomas," Jessica looked up, "you will be offered reinstatement with full back pay, or the equivalent severance with extended health care for your daughter, plus a formal letter of apology signed by this board." Jessica sat very still, then said, "I don't want my job back." The chairwoman nodded. "Then let's talk about what you do want." She didn't ask for a big check or a press conference. She asked for 3 things. 1, that every mother working at Branton, from accounting to janitorial, receive a guaranteed review of their accommodations, including early pickup allowances, care leave, and health benefits for dependents with disabilities. 2, that Mr. Leonard, the janitor who pulled the video, be formally recognized and receive full coverage for his medical treatment. And 3, that Branton's ethics policies be rewritten in plain language, printed and posted in every break room. Angela added one more, all of it in writing, signed, stamped, and submitted to federal review. The board agreed. There were no applause, no congratulations, just the sound of papers being passed, contracts being signed, and silence so thick you could feel the power shift. Jessica stood, picked up her purse, and walked out without looking back. Outside, the sun hit her face, warm, full, whole. Her phone buzzed, a video message. Amaya, in her new speech device, smiling through missing teeth, hair in tiny twists. She pressed the button and spoke 3 words. "You did it, Mommy." Jessica laughed, then cried, not from the pain, but from the relief, because after all the closed doors, after all the humiliation, the silence, the stares, she didn't just survive, she won. But it wasn't about victory, it was about dignity, about telling the truth out loud and being heard. And now it was time to open a new door. It was a small office, nothing fancy. 2nd floor, no elevator, a flickering hallway light and the smell of fresh paint. But when Jessica opened the door, she smiled, because it was hers. A window, a worn desk she got off Craigslist, 2 chairs, one for clients, one for Amaya when she visited after school, and on the wall hung a framed photo, her and her daughter, grinning in front of a for sale sign 2 months ago. She wasn't working for Branton anymore. She'd become an independent real estate broker, took her license, took her pain, and turned it into power, not for money, not for status, but because she refused to let anyone else hold the keys to her life again. Clients came slow at first, friends from church, a referral from the therapist's cousin, a single mum looking for her first rental. And when they sat across from her, nervous, tired, unsure, Jessica didn't talk like a salesperson. She listened. She understood, because she'd lived it. She showed homes while holding her daughter's hand, negotiated contracts between IEP meetings, closed deals at 6 a.m. before therapy drop-offs. And when her daughter had a bad day, Jessica adjusted her hours, not with shame, with pride. Because this life, it was built on truth. One morning, she found Amaya sitting at her desk, scribbling with crayons. "What are you drawing?" Jessica asked. The little girl held it up, a red door, a golden key, and 2 stick figures, hand in hand. Underneath, in shaky letters, "Mommy opened the door." Jessica pressed the paper to her chest and laughed through tears, because that boss, he thought he had every key to her paycheck, her future, her voice, but in the end, he was just a locked door. And Jessica, she had something stronger than access. She had courage, and that's what turns a key. That's what opens a life. She didn't burn bridges, she built new ones for herself, for Amaya, for every woman told to be grateful for less. She thought she was working for a man who held all the power, but in the end, she was the one holding the door open, and she didn't walk through it alone. She held it wide, for the next woman coming behind her. Mr. Solomon, if this story reminded you of your own, even just a little piece of it, don't let it stay silent. Let it live in the comments. Because sometimes, my dear, the door ain't locked. We just need the right key and the courage to turn it.